Imagine standing at the edge of your future. You can see it faintly, a version of yourself who has achieved everything you dreamed of. The business you built, the team you lead, the confidence you carry, the peace you feel, most people stop there. They admire that future self like a painting hung too high to touch. But what if you could reverse engineer it? What if, instead of guessing your way forward, you could work backward from the vision of success you see to the steps you take today? The truth is, success rarely begins with a plan, it begins with a vision. Before any great architect lays a single brick, they first imagine the building in its complete form. They see the end before they begin. That's not because they know every step in advance. It's because they know what done looks like. The human brain works the same way. When we imagine the future with clarity, we begin to find the threads that lead back to the present moment. And it's in those threads that direction, motivation, and meaning are found. Too often, we do the opposite. We start with the steps, the checklist, the to-do list, the grind, and hope that somewhere down the road we'll arrive at fulfillment. But without a clear picture of what that fulfillment looks like, we end up running fast in circles. You can't build a bridge if you don't know what shore you're trying to reach. Reverse engineering your future success starts with a simple but powerful question: what does success feel like to me? Not just what does it look like. Because when you know how it feels, your actions start aligning naturally with that feeling. You stop chasing every opportunity and start creating the ones that matter. Think about an Olympic athlete. They don't just say, I want to win a medal. They imagine standing on that podium, the anthem playing, the medal resting around their neck. They feel it before it happens. Then they trace the path backward. They ask, what kind of training leads to that outcome? What kind of mindset sustains it? What habits build it? Every decision, from what time they wake up to how they eat, becomes an intentional part of that larger picture. That's reverse engineering in its purest form, starting with the vision and then uncovering the behaviors required to make it real. And here's where most people get it wrong. They plan their lives forward from pressure to achieve quickly, to keep up, to prove something, instead of building backward from purpose. The difference between the two is night and day. When you build forward from pressure, every step feels heavy, urgent, anxious. When you build backward from purpose, every step feels intentional, steady, alive. Purpose isn't a finish line, it's a direction. It's the compass that tells you why you're walking in the first place. To reverse engineer your future, you must start asking why before how. Why do you want that success? Why does it matter? Why is it worth the sacrifice? Because purpose gives your future weight. Without it, your vision will drift with every distraction. But when your purpose is clear, every obstacle becomes data. Every setback becomes a signal. You no longer panic when things go wrong because you understand what they're for. They're part of the refinement process that brings your vision into focus. Once you have the vision and the purpose, the next step is to identify your non-negotiables. These are the core principles that will not bend no matter what path you take. They're the backbone of your future. For some people, that might be integrity. For others, curiosity. For others, still family, discipline, or kindness. Whatever they are, these non-negotiables form the foundation you build on. Because the truth is, success without values isn't success at all. It's a transaction. It might make you rich, but it won't make you fulfilled. Imagine your future self looking back at you today. What would they thank you for refusing to compromise on? That's your list of non-negotiables. These values are what will keep you grounded when life tests you, and it will test you. Every future worth building demands a price. The question is whether the price you pay is aligned with the principles you stand for. Reverse engineering your success means deciding those principles now, not later when you're tempted to trade them for convenience. Once you've built the foundation of purpose and principle, it's time to translate the future into action, not grand, heroic action, but small, repeatable actions done daily. Because success, when you trace it backward, is rarely a single leap. It's a series of tiny steps that compound quietly over time. The big goals, the milestones, the achievements, they're all built on a structure of daily discipline. If your vision is to write a book, the path backward is simple. You write 1 page a day. If your goal is to run a marathon, you start by running around the block. If your dream is to lead a global company, you start by leading yourself. Reverse engineering strips away the illusion that success is mysterious. It reveals that what looks extraordinary from a distance is simply the ordinary done consistently with purpose. Every day, you get to ask yourself one powerful question. Does what I'm doing today move me closer to the vision I've seen for myself? If the answer is no, then you know what needs to change. If the answer is yes, then you know what to double down on. The beauty of reverse engineering is that it gives meaning to the mundane. Suddenly, your routines aren't just habits. They're part of your blueprint. Every morning you wake up early. Every time you choose patience over frustration. Every time you stay curious when you could have judged. You are building the scaffolding of your future success. But here's the part that most people overlook. Reverse engineering your future doesn't mean predicting it perfectly. It means preparing for it intelligently. The journey won't be linear. The plan will change. You will have to adjust, sometimes dramatically. And that's okay. The goal isn't to script your life, it's to set the direction and stay flexible enough to adapt as you move. Iteration is the heartbeat of progress. You try, you fail, you learn, and then you refine over and over again. That's how great inventors create breakthroughs. That's how great leaders evolve. That's how great lives are built. Not by avoiding failure, but by engineering it into the process. The more you iterate, the more you learn to trust the system you've created. You stop needing everything to go right, and instead, you focus on staying right within yourself. Because when your purpose is solid and your principles are clear, you can navigate any detour. What makes reverse engineering so powerful? It replaces control with clarity. And clarity is what allows you to move forward with confidence, even in uncertainty. Think of it like building a bridge from the future back to today. The vision is the far end of the bridge. Your values are the pillars. Your daily actions are the planks that connect them. And your willingness to iterate, to learn, to adjust, to evolve is the rope that holds it all together. Without that flexibility, the bridge breaks. But with it, you can walk forward steadily even when the fog is thick. When you reverse engineer your future, you stop living reactively and start living intentionally. You stop asking, what should I do next? And start asking, what does my future require of me today? That single shift changes everything, because now every choice has context, every moment has purpose. You're no longer trying to control time, you're collaborating with it. And maybe the most beautiful part of this process is that your future isn't just something you reach, it's something you become. Every time you act in alignment with the person you want to be, you bring a piece of that future into the present. You stop chasing success and start embodying it. You stop waiting for someday and start living right now, because the truth is, the person capable of that future already exists within you. They're just waiting for you to reverse engineer the steps that will let them emerge. So start today, close your eyes and imagine that future self, the one who has achieved, learned, and grown. Don't just see them, feel them. Feel their confidence, their calm, their fulfillment. Then ask, what did they do to become this person? What choices did they make? What did they say yes to? And what did they walk away from? Trace it all back to this moment. Because this moment right now is the beginning of your blueprint. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to know where you're heading and why. That's how you reverse engineer your future successes. You start with the end in mind, build backward with purpose, stand firm on your principles, act consistently, and evolve fearlessly. The future isn't waiting to happen. It's waiting for you to design it. And it begins not tomorrow, not next week, not someday, but right here in the choices you make today. When people think about success, they often imagine it as something to chase, a finish line waiting in the distance, something to run toward as fast as possible. But the truth is, success isn't something you chase, it's something you design, it's something you build backward. The most fulfilled people in the world, the most effective leaders, the most resilient dreamers, they all have one thing in common: they don't start by asking, what do I need to do? They start by asking, who do I need to become? That's the essence of reverse engineering your future success. To begin with the vision of who you want to be and then walk backward until you arrive at the present moment. Picture a sculptor standing before a massive block of marble. Most people would see a chunk of stone, but the sculptor doesn't. In their mind, they already see the statue within it, the finished form waiting to be revealed. Every strike of the chisel is not an act of guessing, but an act of removing what doesn't belong. That's how success works. It's not about adding more, it's about clarifying, simplifying, and aligning your actions with your vision until only what matters remains. Reverse engineering is not about finding the easiest way forward, it's about uncovering the most meaningful path backward from the life you want to live. The problem is, we've been conditioned to start our lives forward, to begin with plans, steps, and timelines. What's next? We ask. What's my 5-year plan? But the flaw in that approach is that plans without vision lead to business without direction. You might end up climbing a ladder only to discover it's leaning against the wrong wall. The question isn't how to climb faster. It's whether you're climbing in the right direction. Reverse engineering your success begins when you stop reacting to what's urgent and start connecting to what's important. It starts with a vision, not a vague dream, but a vivid picture of your future. Not just what you'll have, but who you'll be. What will your days feel like? Who will you spend time with? How will you make decisions? What impact will your work create? When you can imagine that in detail, you give your mind a target. Clarity gives energy. Without clarity, we confuse motion for progress. But when we have a clear picture of where we're going, even small steps forward start to feel meaningful. The most successful people don't just see the destination, they feel it. They imagine it so clearly that it starts to shape their behavior in the present. When an athlete visualizes crossing the finish line, their body begins to prepare for that reality. Their muscles respond, their breathing adjusts, the mind leads, and the body follows in life. The same principle applies. When your mind knows where you're going, your decisions start aligning naturally with that direction. You start saying yes to things that fit and no to things that don't. You begin to design your life with intention. But vision alone isn't enough. You have to connect it to something deeper, your purpose. Purpose is the why behind your success. Without it, your goals are fragile. They crumble at the first sign of difficulty. But when your purpose is clear, it anchors you. It reminds you that success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about why it matters. Many people plan their lives forward from pressure, the pressure to make money, to meet expectations, to keep up. But pressure leads to burnout. Purpose, on the other hand, leads to fulfillment. When you reverse engineer from purpose, you stop trying to prove yourself and start trying to express yourself. You stop chasing what looks successful and start building what feels significant. The question to ask is not, what do I want to accomplish? But why does it matter that I accomplish it? Because when your why is powerful, the how starts to reveal itself. You don't need to force motivation. It becomes natural. You stop dragging yourself through each day and start being pulled by something greater. Purpose is not found in what you do, it's found in why you do it. And once you discover that, everything changes: your priorities, your focus, your energy. Now, once the vision and purpose are clear, it's time to identify your non-negotiables. These are the values that will guide your behavior no matter the circumstances. They are the principles you refuse to compromise even when it's hard. Because the truth is, the path to success will test you. There will be shortcuts that look tempting. There will be moments when bending your values seems easier than standing firm. But every time you trade a principle for convenience, you weaken the foundation of your future. Your non-negotiables are the guardrails that keep you aligned with your vision when life gets chaotic. Think of them as the DNA of your future success. They determine how you show up when no one is watching, how you lead when no one's applauding, and how you continue when no one's cheering. Integrity, discipline, empathy, curiosity, perseverance, whatever your core values are, they will outlast any specific goal. Goals change, markets shift, circumstances evolve, but values endure. They're not just rules, they're reminders of who you've chosen to be. Once you've established your values, the next step is to translate your vision into daily actions. Reverse engineering means breaking big goals into small, actionable behaviors that you can repeat consistently. Because the secret to extraordinary results isn't doing more, it's doing the right things every day. The world glorifies overnight success, but the truth is, no one builds anything meaningful overnight. What looks like sudden success is usually years of invisible discipline finally revealed. Success is less about intensity and more about consistency. Anyone can work hard for a day. The question is, can you stay committed for years? When you reverse engineer your goals, you realize that the big wins are just a visible part of a much larger structure built from countless small wins. If your goal is to write a book, your daily action might be writing 500 words. If your goal is to build a business, your daily action might be making one meaningful connection. If your goal is to be healthier, your daily action might be walking for 20 minutes. These small actions don't seem significant at first, but over time they compound into transformation. The process becomes the purpose. But here's something important. Reverse engineering isn't about perfection. It's about iteration. It's about testing, learning, adjusting, and trying again. The path to success isn't a straight line. It's a loop. You will make mistakes. You will take detours. You will change your mind, and that's not failure, that's feedback. The people who succeed are not the ones who never fall. They're the ones who use every fall as a lesson for their next step. The ability to reflect, adapt, and improve is the ultimate superpower in a world that changes as fast as ours. Every time something doesn't go according to plan, it's not a reason to quit. It's an opportunity to refine. The beauty of reverse engineering is that it allows you to see challenges as part of the process, not interruptions to it. You realize that progress doesn't come from getting it right the first time. It comes from getting better every time. That's how innovation happens. That's how leadership evolves. That's how personal growth occurs. You don't wait for perfect conditions. You create clarity through movement. When you begin to live this way, starting with vision grounded in purpose, anchored by values, driven by daily action, and refined through iteration, something incredible happens. You stop being at the mercy of circumstances. You stop waiting for luck or timing. You start becoming intentional. Every decision becomes part of a design. Every day becomes a brick in the foundation of your future. You begin to live like an architect, not a wanderer. Reverse engineering your future success also changes your relationship with time. Most people think in terms of days and weeks, but those who design their future think in decades. They ask, who do I want to be 10 years from now? And then they make decisions today that align with that person. That's the power of thinking backward. It gives every present moment a purpose. You're no longer reacting to life. You're building it. And when you build your future backward, you discover something profound. Success isn't a destination. It's a state of alignment. It's not about achieving everything you want. It's about becoming everything you're meant to be. It's the peace that comes from knowing that your actions today are connected to something meaningful tomorrow. It's the quiet confidence that even when you don't have all the answers, you're still on the right path because your direction is rooted in purpose. So take a moment and imagine that version of yourself 10 years from now, fulfilled, successful, at peace. Don't just imagine what you'll have. Imagine who you'll be. What habits will define you? What values will guide you? What kind of energy will you carry? What kind of people will you attract? See that future in detail. Then, like the sculptor, start chipping away everything that doesn't belong, every unnecessary distraction, every fear that no longer serves you, every excuse that keeps you small. The masterpiece of your future already exists. It's just waiting for you to uncover it. Reverse engineering your success isn't about control. It's about clarity. It's not about predicting the future. It's about preparing for it. It's not about rushing forward. It's about aligning backward. You start with vision. You connect with purpose. You anchor in values. You act with discipline, and you grow through reflection. And as you do, something shifts. You realize that the future isn't something that happens to you. It's something that happens because of you. And one day, when you look back at the path you've walked, you'll realize that it wasn't luck or timing or talent that brought you here. It was design, it was intention, it was the courage to begin with the end in mind and the discipline to walk backward until you could move forward. Because that's how every great success is built. Not by guessing what might happen, but by deciding who you'll become and engineering your life to make it inevitable. Most people spend their lives running towards success without ever stopping to ask where they're actually going. They wake up, hustle, chase, grind, and hope that somewhere along the line, it all adds up to something meaningful. But success, real success, doesn't come from motion. It comes from direction. It comes from clarity. And clarity doesn't start by looking forward. It starts by looking backward. To truly design the life you want, you must reverse engineer it. You must begin at the end and work your way back to this moment. Imagine your future self, not the fantasy version you picture when things are easy, but the one who has endured, grown, and achieved something that truly matters. See that version of you clearly. What do they stand for? How do they spend their days? What kind of people are around them? What impact do they have on others? The moment you can visualize that, you've created a destination. You've set the coordinates. And now the work isn't about guessing your next step. It's about tracing the path backward from where you want to be to where you are now. Most people never do that. They start with plans, action plans, business plans, life plans, but not with vision. They start with what's practical, not what's possible. They map out the how before they've ever asked why. And so they end up building fast, but not far, moving constantly, but not meaningfully. The irony is that the more we try to plan our way forward, the more we get lost, because without a clear vision, even perfect execution is wasted effort. The question isn't, what should I do next? The question is, what am I building toward? Or every architect begins with the blueprint, not the hammer. Every filmmaker starts with the final scene in mind. Every great leader starts with a vision of what could be, not just for themselves, but for others. They don't stumble into success bites, they reverse engineer it with intention. The same is true for your life. You can't design your future by reacting to what's urgent. You have to create it by responding to what's meaningful. To reverse engineer your future success, you must first define it. Not by society's standards, not by wealth, titles, or recognition, but by your own sense of fulfillment. What does success feel like for you? Because success isn't about getting everything you want. It's about becoming the kind of person who no longer needs to prove anything. It's not about external validation. It's about internal peace. When you define success through your own values, you free yourself from the illusion of comparison. You stop chasing someone else's dream and start designing your own. The moment you see that future clearly, everything begins to align. You start to understand that your current habits, your choices, your routines, they are all the architecture of that future. Every small decision you make today is a brick in the foundation of the life you're building tomorrow. When you work backward from your vision, the noise begins to fade. You no longer say yes to everything. You no longer get pulled in 100 directions. You start choosing differently because you understand what matters. But clarity of vision isn't enough. You need something deeper, your reason, your purpose, the why behind the what. Because when you work forward from pressure, you burn out. But when you work backward from purpose, you light up. Purpose is the fuel that makes the process sustainable. It's what keeps you grounded when the work gets hard and the results take time. Think of purpose as the heartbeat of your vision. It's what gives meaning to the struggle. It's what turns effort into devotion. When your actions are connected to purpose, even the hardest days make sense. You no longer see challenges as signs that you're off track. You see them as evidence that you're moving toward something worth fighting for. That's what purpose does. It transforms obstacles into opportunities for alignment. Once you've defined your vision and connected it to your purpose, you must decide what will never change, your non-negotiables. These are the core values that anchor your decisions, no matter how far you go or how fast you move. They're the lines you refuse to cross, even when the world tells you to compromise. Because success without integrity isn't success. It's a performance. The people who last, who build legacies that endure, are the ones who know who they are before the world tells them who to be. Ask yourself, what are the principles that will define my journey? Maybe it's honesty. Maybe it's empathy. Maybe it's discipline. Maybe it's curiosity. Whatever they are, they form the boundaries that protect your future from becoming something you don't recognize. They help you make decisions with confidence because you know what you stand for. When life presents you with choices, and your non-negotiables will serve as your compass. They'll remind you that success isn't worth it if it costs you your values. Then comes the work. The daily, ordinary, invisible work. Reverse engineering isn't about finding shortcuts. It's about creating systems. It's about turning your vision into small, repeatable actions that you can execute consistently. Because success, when you really trace it backward, is not a single event. It's 1,000 moments of practice, patience, and perseverance. We love to celebrate breakthroughs, the book launch, the promotion, the medal, the moment of applause, but those moments are the byproduct of years of unseen commitment. They're not magic, they're mathematics, the math of discipline compounded over time. When you reverse engineer your success, you realize that your future doesn't depend on luck, it depends on habits. The small, simple choices you make daily determine the shape of your destiny. If your future self is strong, calm, confident, then today, you must act like that person would. That means choosing patience when it's easier to rush, choosing integrity when it's easier to cut corners, choosing growth when it's easier to stay comfortable. Because every action you take either moves you closer to or further from the person you want to become. Reverse engineering also requires reflection. The willingness to pause, to look back, to learn. Because no matter how clear your vision is, the journey will never be linear. You'll take wrong turns. You'll make mistakes. You'll face uncertainty. That's inevitable. But the people who succeed are not those who avoid failure. They're the ones who build feedback into their process. They understand that reflection is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Without reflection, you repeat mistakes. With reflection, you refine. Think of your path like a series of iterations. Each step teaches you something new about the destination. The goal isn't to get everything right the first time. It's to get clearer every time. That's how mastery is built, not through perfection, but through persistence. Success is not a straight line forward, it's a spiral upward. You return to familiar challenges, but each time you meet them, you're a little stronger, a little wiser, a little closer to who you're meant to be. When you live this way, starting with vision anchored in purpose, guided by values, built on consistent action and refined through reflection, you begin to notice a shift. You stop living in reaction and start living in creation. You no longer ask, what's next? You ask, what matters? You no longer hope things work out. You create the conditions that make them work out. That's the difference between drifting through life and designing it. And there's something else that happens when you reverse engineer your future. You begin to develop trust, not just in the process, but in yourself. You start to see that you are capable of designing, adjusting, and growing into the future you imagine. Confidence isn't built by achieving outcomes. It's built by keeping promises to yourself. Every time you take one small step aligned with your vision, you reinforce that trust. You prove to yourself that you are someone who follows through. The most fulfilled people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who had it all figured out from the start. They're the ones who stayed connected to their vision when things got messy. They didn't let doubt dictate their direction. They didn't let failure define their future. They simply kept showing up. They treated every obstacle as information, every delay as development, every detour as design. That's how you build a future that lasts, not by controlling every outcome, but by staying faithful to the process. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. When you reverse engineer your future, you learn that success isn't a finish line to cross. It's a way of living. It's not something that happens to you. It's something that happens through you. It's the sum of your purpose, your principles, your patience, and your persistence. Repeat it every single day. So take a moment today to imagine that version of yourself, the one you're becoming. Close your eyes and see them clearly. See how they carry themselves. Hear how they speak. Feel how calm they are in the face of uncertainty. Then ask yourself, what did they do to get there? What habits did they build? What fears did they overcome? What distractions did they ignore? Trace it all the way back, step by step, until you find the one small action you can take right now that moves you closer. Then do it. That's how you reverse engineer your future success. You don't wait for the perfect time. You don't chase someone else's timeline. You design your own. One choice, one action, one day at a time. Because the future you dream of is not out there somewhere waiting to find you. It's already written inside you, waiting to be built. And the moment you start working backward with clarity and forward with purpose, that future stops being a dream and starts becoming your reality. Every one of us has at some point stood in the middle of life and wondered where we're headed. We make plans, set goals, and build strategies. We chase promotions, dream of milestones, and tell ourselves that someday when everything aligns, we'll finally feel successful. But here's the truth. Success doesn't come from casing harder. It comes from understanding deeper. It doesn't come from guessing the future. It comes from reverse engineering it. To build a meaningful future, you have to start at the end, not with what you want to do, but with who you want to become. Imagine that version of yourself 10 years from now, the one who has accomplished something remarkable, not because of luck, but because of intention. Picture the life they live, how they think, how they make decisions, how they treat people, how they carry themselves when no one's watching. Most of us imagine the outcome, but forget to study the person behind it. We think success is a prize to win, but it's actually a process to understand. The future you admire is not a mystery. It's a result, a sum of choices, habits, and beliefs repeated over time. The problem is most people live their lives forward. They start with what's in front of them, react to opportunities, and hope the pieces will somehow fall into place. They say yes to everything because they're afraid of missing out, but in doing so, they miss the chance to go deep. Life becomes a checklist, busy but not purposeful, moving but not meaningful. And when they finally pause to look around, they realize they've been climbing a mountain that doesn't even feel like theirs. The ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. Reverse engineering your future success means refusing to climb blindly. It means starting by defining what success actually means to you. Because success in its purest form isn't about money, fame, or status. It's about fulfillment. It's about alignment. It's about waking up in the morning and knowing that what you're doing and who you're becoming are in harmony. Success is when your values and your actions finally meet. So before you decide where to go, take time to ask yourself, what does my ideal future feel like? Not look like, feel like. What emotions define it? Is it peace, freedom, impact, love? Once you identify the feeling, the destination becomes clear. Because the feeling tells you the truth that the image can't. The feeling tells you why you want what you want. That's where clarity begins. Not with the plan, but with the purpose. When you reverse engineer your future, you stop planning from pressure and start planning from purpose. You stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, Why do I want this? Because when you understand your why, the how becomes obvious. When the reason is powerful enough, you find the resilience to stay the course. You stop fighting for motivation because purpose sustains you when motivation fades. Every obstacle becomes a test, not a threat. Every delay becomes a teacher, not a deterrent. Purpose gives struggle meaning, and meaning gives you the strength to persist. But having a vision and a purpose isn't enough. You need something that anchors you, your principles, your non-negotiables, the values that define how you operate, even when life gets messy. These aren't rules that restrict you, they're boundaries that protect you. Because when you build without boundaries, you end up sacrificing the very things that made your dream worth chasing in the first place. Ask yourself, what are the 3 things I will not compromise on, no matter what? Maybe it's honesty, maybe it's empathy, maybe it's the commitment to show up for your family. Whatever they are, write them down. Because those values will be the guardrails that keep you aligned when opportunities tempt you to drift. They'll remind you that the goal is not to win at all costs. It's to win without losing yourself. Success built on compromise isn't success, it's surrender disguised as progress. The most successful people you admire aren't necessarily the smartest or the most talented, they're the most consistent. They know their values, they honor their principles, and they make small, disciplined choices that compound over time. That's the next step in reverse engineering your success, breaking the big vision into small, daily actions that align with who you want to be. Everyone dreams of big results, but very few are willing to fall in love with the process. They want transformation without repetition. They want mastery without monotony. But greatness doesn't happen in bursts. It happens in habits. It's not the giant leap that changes your life. It's the tiny steps you repeat every day. You don't become successful overnight. You become consistent over time. If your future self is confident and healthy, then today you must choose the habits that reflect that, not the easy ones, the right ones. If your future self is disciplined and focused, then today you must show up even when it's inconvenient. If your future self is kind and influential, then today you must treat people with empathy even when no one's watching. Because every choice you make is a rehearsal for the future you're building. When you work backward, your priorities become clearer. You stop chasing every opportunity that crosses your path, and you start aligning with the ones that serve your purpose. You stop saying yes out of fear and start saying no out of clarity. You realize that saying no to distractions isn't rejection. It's design. You're building a system where your energy goes where it matters most. And here's the truth about systems. They're what save you when motivation fails. Motivation is temporary. Systems are sustainable. The people who reach their vision aren't the ones who feel inspired every day. They're the ones who've built structures that carry them even when they don't. They've reverse engineered success into routine so that discipline becomes second nature. The gym, the journaling, the reflection, the gratitude, the learning. These are the quiet, consistent acts that shape destiny. But no matter how intentional you are, the journey won't be smooth. The plan will change. The road will twist. The future you imagine will evolve as you grow. That's why reverse engineering isn't about predicting the future perfectly. It's about preparing for it intelligently. It's about expecting the unexpected and being flexible enough to adjust without losing your foundation. The best designers, engineers, and innovators all understand one truth: iteration is everything. They build, test, learn, and adjust over and over again. Success in life works the same way. You try, you fail, you reflect, and you refine. Every setback is feedback. Every mistake is data. The key is to stay curious long enough to extract the lesson instead of letting the failure define you. When you build your future this way, with vision, purpose, values, consistency, and iteration, something powerful happens. You stop being driven by fear and start being pulled by meaning. You stop needing validation from others because you've built internal alignment. You stop worrying about whether you'll make it because you realize you're already on the right path. Success is no longer a place you arrive, it's the person you become along the way. And the beauty of this mindset is that it creates peace and progress. You no longer feel behind because you understand that every step, even the slow ones, is part of the architecture. You don't compare yourself to others because you realize they're building different blueprints. You stop trying to rush the process because you know that what grows fast rarely lasts, but what grows steadily endures. Think of your future like a masterpiece under construction. The vision is the finished image. The purpose is the inspiration behind it. The values are the framework. The habits are the brush strokes, and the iterations, the adjustments, the refinements are what give it life. It's not about painting fast, it's about painting intentionally. And when you step back years later, you'll see that every deliberate stroke mattered. The power of reverse engineering is that it allows you to live forward with confidence because you've already seen the destination. You're not guessing anymore, you're aligning, you're not reacting, you're responding. Every choice becomes strategic. Every action becomes meaningful. You start building a bridge from your current self to your future self, one deliberate step at a time. So pause for a moment and imagine that bridge. On one side is you, right now, today, with all your doubts, dreams, and potential. On the other side is your future, the version of you who's realized what you're capable of. Between the two is a series of planks, each one representing a single action, a single decision, a single day of effort. That bridge doesn't appear overnight. You build it slowly, piece by piece, until one day you step across it and realize you've become the person you once imagined. That's the essence of reverse engineering your success. It's not about controlling the future. It's about creating it with intention. It's not about predicting outcomes. It's about designing alignment. The future isn't something you wait for, it's something you build backward. So start now. Visualize your best self, not the perfect one, but the truest one. Define your why. Choose your values. Build your habits. Reflect often, adjust bravely, and trust that every small action matters. Because one day, when you look back, you won't see a random series of events. You'll see a pattern, a clear, deliberate sequence of choices that led you exactly where you were meant to be. That is how you reverse engineer your future success, not by rushing into tomorrow, but by designing today, not by chasing more, but by clarifying why. And when you live that way, you'll discover that the future isn't something waiting out there to find you. It's something waiting in here within you to be built. There's a question that every person chasing success eventually faces. How do I get there? How do I become the person I imagine? The instinct is to start planning forward, to take the first step, then the next, hoping that if we just keep moving, we'll arrive somewhere meaningful. But there's a smarter, more intentional way to approach the journey. Start at the end. Picture the result, the life, the version of yourself you dream of, and then work backward. Because success is not found by guessing your way forward. It's built by reverse engineering from where you want to be to where you are now. To reverse engineer your future success, you first need to understand that success isn't a mystery, it's a pattern. Every person who has ever achieved something remarkable didn't stumble upon it. They designed it, whether consciously or not. They looked at what they wanted to become, and then they asked themselves, what would someone like that do every single day? That's the mindset, seeing the destination so clearly that your actions naturally begin to align with it. Most people, however, live in reaction mode. They make decisions based on what's urgent, not what's important. They're constantly responding to life instead of directing it. They work hard, but not necessarily on the right things. They want transformation, but they build without a blueprint. That's like setting out to construct a building without knowing what the finished structure is supposed to look like. You might end up with walls and windows, but no architecture, no purpose, no coherence. The secret is to start by imagining the finished building, then tracing back every layer that supports it. Reverse engineering begins with a vision, not just any vision, but one rooted in who you want to become, not just what you want to achieve. Too many people define success by what it looks like from the outside, the title, the bank balance, the applause. But true success has nothing to do with image and everything to do with alignment. It's not about impressing others, it's about fulfilling yourself. You can't reverse engineer a future that doesn't belong to you. So the first step is honesty, asking yourself what you genuinely want your life to stand for. Once you have that vision, the next challenge is understanding the behaviors that create it. If your future self is someone who leads with courage, then today you must practice bravery in small ways. If your future self is calm under pressure, then today you must learn patience in discomfort. If your future self has impact, then today you must practice influence through empathy. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is filled not with massive leaps, but with daily repetitions of values and action. Think of the most successful people in any field. Athletes, entrepreneurs, leaders, they're not defined by what they achieve once, they're defined by what they repeat consistently. They reverse engineer excellence into their routines, they don't wait to feel ready, they act as if they already are. They know that confidence doesn't precede action, it follows it. Reverse engineering your future is really about building a system, one that supports the person you want to be. Most of us depend too much on motivation, but motivation is fleeting, it's emotional fuel. And emotions change. Systems, on the other hand, are reliable. They make progress automatic. When you create routines, rituals, and habits that align with your long-term vision, you remove the guesswork from your days. You no longer wake up wondering what to do. You've already decided who you are becoming. But systems aren't static. They evolve as you do. That's where many people struggle. They set rigid goals and refuse to adapt when reality changes. They view flexibility as failure. But in truth, adaptability is strength. The most effective plans are living systems. They breathe, they bend, they evolve. Reverse engineering is not about building a straight path. It's about constructing a compass. A compass doesn't tell you every step, but that always points you in the right direction. Let's imagine for a moment that your future self is living a life of deep impact. You're respected, trusted, and fulfilled. How did that person get? They likely didn't rush. They didn't chase shortcuts. They built credibility by doing what they said they'd do consistently, even when no one noticed. They learned to listen more than they spoke. They grew through feedback instead of running from it. Those are not glamorous actions. They're simple, often invisible. But when practiced daily, they form the architecture of trust and excellence. When you reverse engineer success, you realize something profound. The future doesn't change because of one big decision. It changes because of thousands of small ones. The person who gets fit doesn't transform because of one workout. It's the repetition. The leader who earns loyalty doesn't do it through a single speech. It's through consistency in moments of pressure. The entrepreneur who builds something meaningful doesn't do it through one great idea. It's through relentless refinement. When you break success down to its smallest repeatable parts, it becomes achievable. But there's another dimension to this idea, reflection. Reverse engineering isn't just about planning forward. It's about constantly looking back and asking, what worked? What didn't? What needs to change? It's a feedback loop. Every action you take becomes data for the next one. Every failure becomes a clue, not a curse. Most people don't fail because they can't succeed. They fail because they stop reflecting. They mistake movement for progress. They keep pushing forward without adjusting their direction. But a plane that's 1 degree off course will never reach its destination unless it recalibrates. Reflection is that recalibration. When you combine vision, systems, and reflection, something powerful happens. You begin to trust the process. You stop rushing. You stop comparing. You stop doubting whether it's working. Because you understand that growth is rarely visible in real time. It's silent. It's gradual. It's uncomfortable. But it's happening. You're laying the bricks of your future one by one, even when you can't yet see the full wall. And yet, no matter how well you design your path, you'll face resistance. There will be moments of frustration, doubt, even boredom. That's the test. Because the difference between those who reach their vision and those who don't isn't talent. It's endurance. It's the willingness to keep showing up when the excitement fades. The future belongs to those who keep going when no one claps. The truth is, every great success story sounds glamorous in hindsight, but in real time, it feels like struggle, uncertainty, and quiet persistence. That's why reverse engineering isn't just about breaking down goals, it's about building up resilience. It's about understanding that your future self will face challenges and preparing your present self to meet them. You build that resilience through consistency, through doing hard things on purpose, not because you have to, but because you know who you're becoming demands it. Every time you push through discomfort, you reinforce the identity of someone who doesn't quit. That's how confidence is built. Not by avoiding difficulty, but by overcoming it repeatedly. When you live this way, something shifts inside you. You stop being addicted to the finish line. You stop defining success as a single moment in the future, and instead you start finding meaning in the process itself. You begin to realize that the purpose of reverse engineering isn't to arrive faster, it's to arrive wiser. It's to design a path so intentional that even if the outcome changes, the person you become along the way makes it worthwhile. And that's the paradox. When you focus more on who you're becoming than what you're achieving, you end up achieving more. Because success at its core is a byproduct of alignment. When your vision, your actions, and your values all point in the same direction, success becomes inevitable. It's not forced. It flows naturally from the integrity of your process. So how do you start? You start small. You write down the vision of your future self in vivid detail. Then you ask, what does that person do on an average day? What habits do they practice? What boundaries do they protect? Who do they spend time with? What do they say no to? And then you begin living those answers right now, not someday. That's how you bridge the gap, by acting today as if you're already that person. When you practice this enough, Your actions begin to align with your identity, and once your identity shifts, the rest follows naturally. You no longer need willpower to stay disciplined, because discipline becomes who you are. You no longer chase confidence because confidence grows from evidence, the evidence of doing what you said you would do. You no longer fear the future because you're actively creating it. That's what it means to reverse engineer success, not waiting for life to reveal your purpose, but designing your path with purpose, not hoping for the future to change, but deciding that you will change in ways that make the future inevitable. Because in the end, success isn't about predicting what's coming. It's about preparing who you'll be when it comes. The most successful people aren't lucky. They're prepared. They've done the internal work. They've rehearsed their future through their habits, their mindset, and their systems. They've lived into their vision before it ever happened. So when you look ahead at your own future, don't just ask, what do I want? Ask, who must I become to deserve it? Then work backward. Build the steps. Create the systems, live the values, reflect, adjust, endure. That's how you transform dreams into realities, not through hope, but through design. And one day, years from now, when you look back at the path you've walked, you'll see that every small decision mattered. Every bit of effort compounded. Every setback redirected you, not destroyed you. You'll realize that success didn't surprise you. It found you ready. That's the beauty of reverse engineering your future. You stop waiting for the future to happen, and you start building it deliberately, one choice at a time, because the best way to predict your future is not to guess it. It's to design it with intention, with patience, and with unwavering belief in who you are becoming.